Have you ever thought about how your priorities gradually change as you get older? It is a subtle but profound transformation. Things that once seemed indispensable, such as having a large circle of friends or constantly engaging in social activities, begin to feel less urgent. You may even find that things that used to be at the center of your life no longer carry the same weight. Here's the liberating truth. After 70, you don't really need friends in the way you believed you needed them when you were younger. This may come as a surprise, especially when the culture around you often advocates a large and active social network. But if you take a moment to reflect, you'll realize that embracing your independence and focusing on your own happiness can be one of the most empowering choices you'll ever make. It is very important to emphasize that this is not a call for solitude. No, it is about something much more enriching: liberation, the freedom to live on your own terms, unburdened by the constant need for social approval. It is not about detaching from yourself, but about stepping into a phase where you realize that everything you need is right inside you. The joy of solitude, the peace of mind of fewer obligations, and the satisfaction of focusing on what really matters. So let's explore 6 compelling reasons why the need for many friendships may diminish as we age, and why this shift can actually bring a deeper sense of fulfillment and clarity. As your life changes, it may not be about having a bustling social calendar, but about developing a life that resonates with your deeper needs, and that is not only okay, but exactly what you need for true well-being. 1. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. When you were young, friendships often revolved around approval, fitting in, being accepted, keeping up appearances. You may have measured your self-worth by how many people liked you, invited you out, or praised your achievements. After the age of 70, however, this need begins to disappear. By the time you reach this stage of your life, you have probably experienced decades of ups and downs, successes and failures, love and loss. You have already built your life, your story, and your legacy. Other people's opinions? They no longer have the same weight, not because you have become complacent, but because you have become wise enough to realize that external approvals do not define inner peace. Take Harold, for example, a man who was once successful in corporate America, constantly surrounded by people, meetings, and workplace camaraderie. For years, he believed that these connections were real, the kind that would last a lifetime. But when he retired, these relationships quickly faded. Calls stopped. The invitations dwindled. At first it hurt. He felt invisible. Over time, however, she realized that many of these ties were second order, based on convenience rather than genuine connection. So instead of clinging to shallow ties, she chose to shift her focus inward. She rediscovered long-forgotten hobbies, started painting, and kept a diary about her experiences. She stopped trying to impress anyone, took off the mask she had worn for decades, and in doing so, found a deeper, quieter sense of freedom. A freedom based on authenticity, not approval. 2. Peace of mind becomes more valuable than socializing. At some point, the noise of constant interaction loses its charm. Small talk, superficial pleasantries, the need to always find something to say. It all starts to feel more like clutter than connection. Peace, real, quiet, uninterrupted peace, becomes not only desirable, but necessary. Margaret, 74, once had a calendar full of social obligations, lunches, phone calls, church meetings, bridge nights. Her days were full, but her soul labored empty. She began to realize that most of these conversations were either repetitive, full of gossip, or devoid of meaning. After each interaction, he felt more exhausted than fulfilled. That's when he began to question, was he really enjoying these moments, or was he just acting out of habit? So she made a quiet decision to get away from the noise. He turned down invitations more often, let the phone ring without answering, and welcomed the silence that followed. In this silence, he found something extraordinary, a kind of serenity that no social gathering had ever given him. His mind was clearer. His heart felt lighter. She began to spend her afternoons reading by the window, sipping tea on her veranda, or just listening to the birds singing. This was not solitude, it was peace, a holy, soul-deep peace. And it was beautiful. 3. Less friendship means less disappointment. The more people you try to keep close, the more likely you are to be disappointed. Friends forget to call back, plans are canceled without explanation, or worse, people disappear when you need them the most. The more energy you expend on maintaining a large number of contacts, the more you let yourself down. This is not because you want too much, but because often the balance was never established in the first place. William, now 78 years old, knows this story very well. For most of his life, he has been reliable, the first to reach out, the one who remembers birthdays, the one who makes an effort to keep friendships alive. But as the years passed, he began to realize something painful. Very few people were doing the same for him. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe he was too busy, too distant, not fun enough. But in time, he realized the truth. He wasn't the problem. He was just filling empty glasses. So he stopped. He left the relationships that were draining him and pursued only those that felt mutual, real, and supportive. And something extraordinary happened. Disappointments diminished. He felt lighter without the weight of expectations, calmer, more peaceful. Because after all, you don't need a long guest list to feel loved. You only need relationships that nourish you, not those that make you feel empty. You deserve peace, not disappointment. 4. Your time is too valuable to waste. When you are young, time seems endless. There is always one more day to do what you want, see what you want, and be who you want to be. But when you pass 70, this illusion disappears. You realize that every day is a gift, not a guarantee. Suddenly, the idea of spending hours on chit-chat, routine meetings, or mandatory checkups starts to feel more like surviving than living. Why waste your limited and precious energy on interactions that drain rather than invigorate you? In his early 80s, Richard had always been the life of the party. His phone was constantly ringing with invitations, and his calendar was a labyrinth of brunches, dinners, and community events. At first, he enjoyed the attention, the feeling of being needed and being part of something. Gradually, however, she began to realize how mentally, emotionally, and even physically exhausted she felt afterwards. What had once felt like pleasure had become routine, and routine into obligation. So she made a quiet but powerful decision. She stepped back. She started turning down invitations that didn't excite her, stopped answering phone calls that felt like a chore, and reclaimed her days. With fewer distractions, she found more space for creativity, reflection, and rest. His mornings were slower, his afternoons quieter, and his evenings filled only with what brought him joy: reading, gardening, the occasional glass of wine while watching the sunset. And in this simplicity, she felt more alive than she had in decades. Time is your most precious possession, especially now. Don't waste it on people, places, or plans that don't lighten your heart. You have earned the right to choose how you spend your hours. Spend them for joy. 5. True companionship starts with yourself. We're often taught that being constantly social is the golden ticket to happiness, that our worth is tied to how many friends we have or how active our social calendar looks. But in truth, real companionship begins within. After 70, you've spent a lifetime learning, growing, and evolving. And now you know yourself better than ever before. That deep self-awareness isn't just comforting. It's a powerful ally that offers clarity, peace, and strength. Eleanor, 76, used to fill every hour of her day with coffee meetups, phone calls, and community events, not because she enjoyed them all, but because she feared what silence might reveal. But over time, she learned to sit with herself, to embrace the stillness instead of running from it. That's when everything changed. She discovered that solitude didn't equal emptiness. In fact, it became the space where she felt most authentic, most alive. The chatter quieted, and in its place came a quiet joy she never knew she was missing. The irony is, when you find genuine comfort in your own presence, you no longer need to chase others for validation. The right people show up naturally, not because you're seeking them out, but because your peace becomes magnetic. No more pretending, no more performing, just calm, honest, nourishing peace. 6. Letting go makes room for fulfillment. Holding on to old friendships out of guilt or routine only drains you. These connections, once meaningful, can start to feel like obligations instead of sources of joy. The pressure to maintain them just because they've always been there can rob you of precious energy and emotional clarity. What if, instead of clinging to what no longer serves you, you gave yourself permission to release it, guilt-free, and opened your life to something better, something more aligned with who you are today? Take James, for instance. In his late 70s, he always believed that staying social was the secret to staying young. His days were filled with coffee catch-ups, endless phone calls, and the same old stories. But over time, he realized he was tired of conversations that went nowhere, tired of being around people who didn't really see him anymore. So one day, he simply stopped. No big announcements, no hard feelings, just a quiet decision to prioritize his own peace. And in that quiet, he discovered something extraordinary: clarity, freedom, and a deep, unshakable happiness. Letting go isn't about shutting doors with resentment. It's about opening new ones with intention. Doors that lead to stillness, simplicity, and a kind of fulfillment you can only find when you stop carrying the weight of outdated expectations. You're not giving up on connection. You're giving yourself the space to invite in something far more meaningful. Final thoughts. The idea that you don't need friends after 70 isn't about cutting ties or shutting people out. It's about stepping into a new chapter of life with clarity and confidence. It's about becoming free from expectations that no longer serve you, free from obligations that once felt necessary, free to live each day entirely on your own terms without guilt or explanation. At this stage in life, you've already given so much to others: family, friends, careers, responsibilities. Now, it's your time. You've earned the right to choose how you spend every hour, every moment, whether that's sipping tea in silence, diving into a book, strolling in the park alone, or having a quiet dinner with one close companion. It's all valid, because your peace, it's not just important, it's sacred. Sometimes the richest conversations happen in stillness. The deepest comfort is found in your own company, and the most profound freedom comes from knowing that solitude is not something to fear, but something to cherish. So pause, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what truly brings me peace? Because now, more than ever, that's exactly what you deserve.